So I wanted to do some rundown here on the latest news with the Phil Lyman. It's partly for the Phil Lyman campaign, but really, more broadly speaking, this is actually a topic that concerns an awful lot of people, namely that the way that we are doing elections in the United States has been under attack for quite some time. Namely, so just some background. I've done some videos on this in the past of the Utah caucus-convention system, and caucus-convention is really it's the grassroots way to get representation in government. You go and you show up as a neighborhood, you meet with your neighbors, and you vote for someone to represent you in your nominating convention. Um, and in the nominating convention, that's where they choose the candidates who will end up on your primary ballot, and then whoever wins the primary for a party goes on to the general election ballot. And so, like, one way we could caption this is basically just here's the process for how people get on the ballot. It's something that maybe we don't pause to wonder about often enough. Is how do your candidates even get on the ballot in the first place? And Utah, if you've been paying attention, and if you haven't, I'll try to catch up to speed. In Utah's governor race this year, we've had the incumbent Spencer Cox running against Phil Lyman, and Spencer Cox didn't really even campaign for the nominating convention. He was against Phil Lyman there, and so Phil Lyman actually won the nominating convention by a landslide. And so this is, and yet, despite the fact that the people of Utah, through the authorized method of nominating candidates to appear on the November ballot, the people of Utah chose Phil Lyman. And yet, by the time of Utah's November general election, Phil Lyman wasn't even on the ballot anymore. So, like, in case you've wondered, like, is it a big deal how people get onto the ballot or not, or what are the rules behind that? It's actually a huge deal. Um, and so, actually, Phil Lyman is now suing Spencer Cox because of these shenanigans where um, I mean, how do you win your party's nominating convention and then not even show up on the November ballot? This is just really really ridiculous stuff. Um, so let me share my screen here, and we're going to dive into some details of the case. Really, the purpose of this live stream is to get people reading the case, or at least get the ideas out there of what is this case about, what is even in it. Let me go ahead and share this. All right, so here we have. I'm just bringing up this little graphic. This is just to, as a reminder of what happened in the Republican nominating convention this year. Spencer Cox got a less than a third of the delegate vote, and Phil Lyman came away with, he defeated Spencer Cox by a landslide. And just so you know, like the delegates who are at the convention, they're people who have done their homework. They have vetted the candidates. I've been a delegate here in Utah, and we get to go and meet with these candidates face to face, and it's great because you bring all your tough questions, and it's really hard for politicians who are trying to hide something to weasel their way out of an intelligent voting public who gets to grill them in these like little cottage meetings and meet and greet events. So it's really great. It's not like just this campaigning from afar. Some candidates for political office have been criticized of for what seems like just hiding in the basement while their campaign goes out and just pumps a whole bunch of money into ads or whatever, or just relies on name recognition and stuff like that. So it's a fundamentally different process. And so these people actually know and have met and vetted these candidates, and that's one of the things that's great about this. But without further ado, let's go ahead and just jump into the case itself here. So this Supreme Court case. Let's see. Here we go. So this is from the Supreme Court's website right here. I have a link to this in the description on the live stream here. And yeah, so Phil Lyman, petitioner, he's suing Spencer Cox. This was filed November 12th, so yesterday. This is hot off the press. Really interesting stuff. So there's a petition, an appendix. I'm just going to go ahead and jump right into the petition itself. Okay, so I'm probably not going to read this whole thing because it's 40 pages, which is the page limit, I think, for these petitions. But I want to dive into it and get the gist of it. What's in here? So Phil Lyman is suing Spencer Cox, who's the respondent. So Phil Lyman's the petitioner. Spencer Cox is the respondent. Petition for extraordinary writ. And the extraordinary writ could have an effect on this election outcome. If granted, this could actually change who's actually in the governor's office, depending on how the case is heard. And what the decision is. So let's get into the meat right here. The question presented is, okay, in New York State Board of Elections, so there's this previous court case they're citing, and the court's ruling, the opinion in that case stated, a political party has a First Amendment right to limit its membership as it wishes, and to choose a candidate selection process that will, in its view, produce the nominee who best represents its political platform. So I don't think there's anything like hugely controversial in here. This is First Amendment stuff. Yeah, you have freedom of association. You can associate with the party. I would caveat this. If I'm just reading this out of the blue and somebody just states this, I would say, I believe that's true, provided the political party is not granted any political power. And we're going to get into some intricacies of the system here. But what it comes down to, just to kind of like, what it comes down to is republicanism versus democracy and mobocracy, and basically the government telling you who you can and can't vote for, right? So let's get into this though. So these rights are circumscribed, however, so the party's rights to choose their nominee, when the state gives the party a role in the election process. Okay, the party has a role in the election process, so and that squashes the party's rights. It's fascinating, as New York has done here by giving certain parties the right to have their candidates appear with party endorsement on the general election ballot. Okay, so just by way of background, this is essentially a question of, does your party get to decide who their nominee is, or does the state get to decide who the nominee is how I'm reading this. And yeah, if the party has some political skin in the game, then this is this can run afoul excuse me, of the party's rights. Okay, as in this ruling, the Utah Republican Party's associational rights are at issue only as a shield and not as a sword. No Utah law prohibits a candidate from attending a political party convention and seeking to persuade the delegates to support him. So this is important, is saying, we have a free and open, like any candidate, anybody who wants to run for office is free to attend these nominating conventions and to lobby, to campaign, etc., try to win the delegates' vote, right? He's going to run on a particular party platform. Question: did the Utah Supreme Court run afoul of this court's judgment by concluding that a state can mandate a candidate? Ooh, okay. This is intense. This is the real contest here. I'm loving this. Concluding that a state can mandate a candidate who won the political party's nomination through the convention process to participate in the direct primary because the candidate who lost that convention collected signatures, giving the losing candidate a second chance to seek the political party's nomination. Okay, so I'm going to zoom out here, and I'm going to go ahead and reveal my biases here, right, so to speak. So I'm biased in favor of freedom, I'm biased in favor of the Constitution, and I'm biased in favor of people actually being represented in government. And what's happening here is the people have a representational process. It's the caucus-convention system. The party nominee was, in fact, Phil Lyman for governor by the Utah Republican Party. And here we have the state mandating that the candidate who already won the people's vote for the party, he already has the party's nomination, right? So he should appear on the November ballot because he won the convention. He won the nominating convention. That's why it's called nominating convention. Is this decides who goes on your November general election ballot. But then we have this secondary process, that's the primary, which is not original to the Constitution, by the way, and you should see my other videos on that for an explanation of that and the history of how that got added back in the 1930s as part of the progressive movement. So if we have this leftist thing that's sandwiched onto this, and this is how we got to this point, is that the state is now mandating that the person who already won the party's nomination, per our First Amendment rights, we can choose our candidates, right? And now the state's saying, whoa, wait, we want to have a second crack at this. So we have invented this alternative path whereby a candidate who wasn't the people's candidate and who wasn't elected, wasn't nominated through this nominating convention, right, by the delegates, he now has a backdoor to get onto the November election ballot. And at the same time, by the way, take the person who actually won the convention off of the ballot. So here's a huge representational issue. If you actually care about your election rights, if you care about representation in government, this is a huge case, really important to pay attention to. And yeah, at the end of the day, as I understand it, this case is essentially asking, hey, did the state of Utah mess up here by basically coming up with their own instrument to say, hey, we're going to decide who's on the ballot. We're just going to make something up, and we're going to have our own incumbent, our own state-sponsored candidate, and we're going to do a bait and switch, which is exactly what happened, because now he's running with the party's endorsement on the November ballot. This is huge, and the delegates, the people who actually were involved in this process of nominating a candidate, are very upset about this because, and rightly so, because this disenfranchises everybody. You, the people, go out and vote for somebody, and then the government says, we don't like your candidate, we're just going to put our own candidate on the ballot, and we're going to take your one off of the ballot. Exactly what happened here. So how the Supreme Court rules on this will potentially just determine who is actually in office for the Utah governor, as well as this has the potential to restore voters' rights. It has the potential for us to get to a point where we actually have reasonable and decent candidates on the ballot. And it does touch on, Phil Lyman is not directly challenging, the final layer of this onion, but I think this is some really good pushback. I should probably produce a graphic for this, but just to kind of give you an overview of what I've stated in other videos, and backed up with the historical record, is that you have the Constitution, which says you are to have a Republican form of government, and republics are great. You vote for people you actually know, and so you meet in these caucus meetings. This is the caucus-convention system is essentially it's the last vestige we have of a Republican form of government in the United States. But you vote for these people to represent you. You have a nominating convention or whatever, where you have ideally you would have a nonpartisan election system. Actually, that was what the Constitution originally authorized, and so we got away from that. I'm getting into the history here, just so you know, there are a lot of layers to this onion. General elections are not original to the Constitution. Like just going out and having spam a big popular vote, and decide votes that way. No, like for the presidential elections, each state the legislature would choose the manner of appointing electors, and each state could have a different system for doing this, which is cool because you could experiment with it and figure out what works and what doesn't work so well. But you'd have that, and what's happened over time is now the electors are bound and to follow a popular vote, which is anti-Republican. That's by definition, that's a pure democracy, raw democracy, as opposed to a republic. If you have bound electors, then you just turn the electoral college into this gerrymandered popular vote. So anyways, then they got primaries added onto it, which are just saying, hey, we don't like your Republican outcome. Hey, Republicans, don't stop Republicaning, right? We want Democrat candidates. We want to be able to spend our way to win. And so the primaries got added. And then in Utah, we have what's called SB54. It's a signature gathering. It was a Senate bill. It's introduced a handful of years ago, that allowed candidates to just go around and gather signatures and bypass the caucus convention system. So Phil Lyman's court case here, his petition could unseat that power. It could actually directly challenge. It is directly challenging SB54 in that sense, because SB54 is basically the state's way of saying we get to choose who's on the ballot, your party doesn't, which stinks. All right. Anyway, I just wanted to give some backdrop there to say this is kind of the trajectory. There are a lot of other things that have been done, but there's some archaeology. Ultimately, I would love to go and challenge the very part of this crummy two-party system that we've got. But repealing SB54 would be awesome. So okay, just scrolling past like a lot of the stuff here, and again, I'm probably not going to read the whole thing, but let's just dive in. I'll stop giving so much commentary. Um, okay, it is beyond debate that freedom to engage in association for the advancement of beliefs and ideas is an inseparable aspect of the liberty assured by the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment, which embraces freedom of speech. Petitioner Phil Lyman was chosen as the nominee by the Utah Republican Party delegates nominating convention held on April 27th, 2024, by receiving more than 60% of the votes. So, in case you're not familiar with the Utah Republican Party rules, any candidate that receives more than 60% of the delegate vote is just automatically goes on the November ballot, right? So that's the rule. There's no need. They have a different case where if it's less than 60%, then the top two candidates go to a primary. That was not the case here. Phil Lyman won by a landslide, so there's no need to hold a primary, nor is a primary authorized per the party's own rules, right? But this is where the party's rules and the state law have come into conflict, because the state law now says there's actually a an end around. There's a shortcut route, and that's the route that Spencer Cox took. He paid a company to go and gather signatures door to door instead of relying on the caucus-convention system. And if you have any thoughts or you want to analyze the signature gathering system, please share your thoughts and ideas in the comment, because I'll go ahead and share mine. It's not representative. It's just a spending game, because you can find anybody to sign something. You know, they just don't have to. They have to not know what it is, or else be an extremist who wants this thing. And you know, the threshold was what I don't remember the exact number, 28,000 ish signatures, 30. It was in the ballpark of 30,000. Not remembering the figure off the top of my head that a candidate needed to gather. Are there 30,000? You know, leftist extremists in Utah? Yeah, I believe so. You know, or people who don't know what they're doing, and yeah, they didn't even allow Phil Lyman to see the signatures, and that's another huge issue here. Um, which he may be indirectly challenging that in particular, but that's maybe an administrative thing, but it's still not honoring people's rights. Anyway, so yeah, he received 67+% of the delegate vote. Yet a direct primary was held on June 25th between petitioner Lyman and respondent Spencer Cox, and respondent Deidre Henderson for the office and joint ticket of the governor and lieutenant governor. Respondent Henderson has certified that she and respondent Cox are the Republican Party nominee. So, all right, this is funny, because Deidre Henderson is certifying her own election. Sorry, can you say separation of powers? Like this smells awful. Yeah, overseeing her own election, that should not be allowed. Um, Petitioner Lyman petitioned the Utah Supreme Court for extraordinary writ, wherein a single justice determined that he has not presented a basis for the court to exercise its discretion to grant the relief requested. Really? Saying, hey, you guys didn't even follow the law. Uh, anyways, and the law is self-contradictory. And he was clearly denied his rights. Anyways, if that's not adequate basis, then this is why I voted no, by the way, on all Utah judges on the retention votes. I just can't vote to retain people who deny people their rights. Okay, so the Utah Supreme Court denied the petition for extraordinary relief, not recognizing the entire ruling from this court and only quoting a portion of that case from earlier, construing it to fit a narrative that the state can force petitioner Lyman to direct primary after he already achieved the party nomination at convention. Right. So this is how overt can you be? How blatant? How egregious? How corrupt? The people voted for Phil Lyman through the authorized procedure, and now the state's like, no, you don't get to, you the people don't get to choose your nominee. That's ridiculous. This court has often noted constitutional rights would be of little value if they could be indirectly denied. Okay, you know, so nice flowery speech there, but doesn't do any good if they actually continue to do that. Deny the rights. Okay, petitioner Lyman respectfully petitions this court for a writ of certiorari to review the judgment of the Utah Supreme Court, the court of last resort, and remanded the case back for further proceedings. So this originally petitioned the Utah Supreme Court. Utah Supreme Court said, no, you don't have a basis. And Phil Lyman says, yeah, I do. So you better hear the case. You better require the Utah Supreme Court to have an actual hearing of this. So opinions. Opinions. Okay, jurisdiction. The Supreme Court shall have the original jurisdiction to issue all extraordinary writs and to answer questions of law, of state law certified by a court within the state. The Supreme Court shall have appellate jurisdiction over all matters to be exercised as provided by statute and power to issue all writs and orders necessary for the exercise of the Supreme Court's jurisdiction or the complete determination of any cause. All right, that's Article 8, Section 3, the Utah Constitution. So, alrighty. Yeah, and so this is from the original appeal to say, hey, or petition for an extraordinary writ, saying, hey, you guys have jurisdiction, and something extraordinary is happening here, namely this subversion of the will of people. So a single justice denied the petition for extraordinary writ, declaratory and injunctive relief, leading petitioner Lyman to invoke this court's supervisory power. Okay, yeah. More boilerplate stuff. Okay, all right. Oh, this constitutionality thing. This is a good deal right here. So the Utah Republican Party and its members have been dealing with the question of the constitutionality of SB54. That's the signature gathering law that Cox used to go around the convention, not the nominating convention, since its implementation in 2014. So this is a 10-year-old thing. In the denial of unbanked hearing for Utah Republican Party v. Cox, Chief Judge Timkovich noted, the issues raised here deserve the Supreme Court's attention. The panel majority pledges continued faith in an oft-repeated strand of Supreme Court dicta, which, as my dissent argues, asterisk 1072, I don't know what that is, I'll have to look it up, has outlived its reliability. At this point, the Supreme Court's homage to state regulation of the primary election process is little more than a nod to received wisdom. Okay, yeah. Let's see. Petitioner Lyman invokes this court's jurisdiction. This court is considering the constitutionality of a Utah statute. So yeah, this is directly challenging SB54, saying, hey, we're challenging the constitutionality of this. And this is great because we've talked to Utah legislators, and like getting it repealed from the legislature, it's like kind of good luck, you know. For some reason, it's very, very difficult to get our legislators to care in the state and to get them to act appropriately. So a ruling from the courts against SB54 would be awesome. Deidre Henderson, the Lieutenant Governor of Utah, is a party in this case, acting in her official capacity as Chief Election Officer and as an individual seeking the Republican nomination. Okay. All right. So more on SB54. In Utah, the political landscape has been shaped by the traditions and values of its residents, with political parties enjoying considerable autonomy in nominating candidates for general elections. The Utah Republican Party is notable for its unique nominating process rooted in community engagement and grassroots participation, which is awesome. Sorry, my commentary on this. The year I got involved in caucus was the year, it was 2016. It was my first time. So I've been doing this for 8 years. And the first presidency of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints had issued a letter to all of the stakes in Utah to be read over the pulpit in sacrament meetings. So that's just where I heard it, is in a sacrament meeting. I went to church on Sunday, and I heard, hey, Utahns, you are not participating enough in the political process, and you should go and participate. And they actually called out this year that there was this new provision. This is what the first presidency was referring to. They were referring to SB54. So if you think this is like just some political opinion issue, it's not just a matter of political opinion. The first presidency of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, God's prophet on the earth, has expressed concern about political participation and in preserving the grassroots system of elections. So, I mean, if there's one nugget you want to pull out of this whole thing, I would go with that. Like that, if you're not understanding this thing, the best way to find out what it's about is to go participate. And this is very needful, frankly, for us to go against SB54 because many Utahns and the media in particular are really going after the caucus convention nominating system because they know it actually represents the people well, whereas the primaries and other systems, SB54, do not. So, because that's just a spending game. And that's I've mentioned this before on this channel. It's just democracy or mobocracy becomes a spending game, especially when you have a Federal Reserve that's just printing whatever they want, and national parties get a lot of out-of-state money funding our going against our grassroots candidates. Okay. All right. Before SB54 was introduced in 2014, Utah's election laws allowed parties to choose their own nomination methods, which, I mean, that sounds fine. Well, some followed the state's primary election system. The URP, Utah Republican Party, opted for a convention process that reflected its values and member voices. And honestly, okay, sorry, I'm commenting again because this is worth unpacking. Something everybody should know, and Phil Lyman is actually calling out right here, is to say that the caucus convention system is a Republican form of electing, whereas the primary system is a Democratic one. And if you really need to figure that out, like go ask yourself why were primaries installed as part of the progressive movement? Why was Utah's left-leaning communist sect basically trying to push primaries on us? And this is something a lot of Utahns don't realize because we're just used to it. We're just, oh yeah, of course there are primaries. A ton more people participate in primaries than caucus convention because almost nobody knows about caucus convention because, sorry, our state doesn't really educate people about it. So you can see which side of this they're on, which side the institutions of government are choosing to side with. Not least of which is the passage of SB54. So we did just have a caucus convention system, and yeah, First Presidency is like, hey, get out there, go save this, go save the grassroots system. Party members gather in local precincts, so this is the description of the caucus system, for caucus meetings, which serve as the cornerstone of the Republican Party's nominating process. Open to all Utah citizens who reside in the precincts, who want to participate, and who will be at least 18 by the time of that year's general election. So yeah, I've heard so many people on social media, these trolls coming out and saying, well, primaries, these people who are at the convention are clearly out of touch because the primary result disagrees with them. And I'm like, you guys are clear Democrat trolls. I'm sorry, and I'm not saying that it's necessarily morally wrong to have ever voted for a Democrat, but it is an objective fact. This is a mathematical reality. It's a truth that Democratic methods of election are inherently less secure and inherently less intelligent than Republican ones. That's just a fact. I'm just laying that out there. Whatever your political leanings, whichever party you've voted for or whatever. And this is one of the other hazards, by the way, that the First Presidency has pointed out to us, is the fact that if you vote just a straight ticket, you vote along party lines, you're going to get hoodwinked. Like many hundreds of thousands of Utah voters did this year with Spencer Cox, because he's not a Republican, frankly, in terms of his values. And yet he somehow had the Republicans' blessing of the Republican Party, even though we didn't nominate him. The party did not nominate him. The state nominated Spencer Cox. Okay, so yeah, everyone who wants to participate, everybody who's of voting age by the time of the general election. So each caucus meeting begins with a prayer, followed by the recitation of the Pledge of Allegiance and reading the state and county platforms, reinforcing attendees' commitment to shared principles and patriotism. I love these. These gatherings foster camaraderie and encourage discussions about state and national issues, allowing members to share opinions and rally around common values, which promotes a vibrant local political culture. I love this. This is so true. I don't know. It might not be possible to put this on a bumper sticker, but I'm thinking Moroni's title of liberty here, right? This really is. We've had those kinds of conversations at the caucus meetings, and it's great. You can talk about real stuff and not just be having a shouting match on Facebook. A key task of the caucus is selecting delegates to represent their communities at the party convention. This process ensures grassroots voices are heard. Once elected, these delegates attend the party convention, where they participate in nominating candidates by voting after hearing nomination speeches, with the convention open to public participation. In this process, the stakes are clear in the Utah Republican Party Constitution. If a candidate for an office receives 60% or more of the votes cast, he or she would secure the party's nomination for that office and shall proceed to the general election. So again, like this is a two-stage thing, caucus in your neighborhood, and you select your delegates, and your delegates represent you at the convention. And I'm going to go ahead and reiterate this because I apologize if I sound like a broken record, but like it's extremely rare. I don't think I've ever heard anyone point this out, but the minute you bind your electors, like we do in most states under the modern presidential electoral college, and say, hey, you are required to vote according to what the people said in the primaries, then what you're doing is you no longer have a republic, right? You're doing the exact same thing the Democrats and the state are doing here by saying you're not allowed to have a Republican method of government. Um, because the Republican method of government is you're actually having real conversations with real people that you actually know, and you're voting for the most intelligent, the wisest, the people with the greatest integrity that you know to represent you, and then they actually get to choose. They get to vote according to conscience, which is key. Like an elector who is bound is not an elector at all; he's just a puppet, right? Um, so I hope you ponder that again. Like if another big takeaway here, just like I hope you ponder like what is the effect of binding your electors, and that's one thing I just want to bring up here because unlike the modern presidential electoral college, the delegates at the convention are unbound. Like I talk with the voters in my precinct, and I can get their opinion on stuff. They can reach me. They can share stuff, and they say, "Hey, I've researched this guy, and you might want to watch out for that," or "I had this one experience," or whatever. They're 100% free to do that, and that's awesome. And yeah, I'm accountable to them because they elected me to be a delegate to represent them. But at the same time, like whatever I learn in any of these races on any of these candidates, I am free to exercise my own discretion, and that's a really good and beautiful thing. Because whenever you have a discrepancy between your primary result and your caucus convention result, that is an opportunity for conversations. That's an opportunity to teach the public, frankly, because the vast majority of the time, yes, these delegates have done their research, they've done their homework, they know these things a lot better than your average person does, and so yeah, with the um, primary method, you're getting kind of the average, you're getting average results, whereas with the caucus convention, you get above average because people actually know what they're voting for. So yeah, the primaries, an uninformed vote is counted the same as an informed one. All right. Yeah, in this process, the stakes are clear in the Utah Republican Party constitution. If a candidate for an office receives 60% or more of the votes cast, he or she would secure the party's nomination for that office and shall proceed to the general election. However, the process is not as simple when multiple candidates compete for the same position. If more than two candidates are seeking the nomination for a given office, voting occurs in successive ballots until two remain or until one candidate achieves the coveted 60% threshold. Okay, I don't like that word covet, but yeah, you get the idea. Um, yeah, I don't like the multi-round stuff. That's an issue for another uh, topic because there are so many ways to corrupt a republic, and anytime a republic gets corrupted, it turns into a mobocracy or just an oligarchy. That's the fact of the matter. You either have a republican, you have a truly intelligent representative system, or you have something a lot worse, right? So, and any of these things, any deviation can corrupt it. But this is a major one. So, if the final two candidates lack a majority, the nomination process shifts to a state-run direct primary election. This structure means the party only resorts to the primary when no candidate receives enough support from the convention delegates. A nominee reaching 60% of the convention vote secures the nomination, effectively barring challengers from alternative routes. Okay, state of Utah. The Utah Republican Party has decided that we're not entertaining candidate. We're not endorsing a candidate. We're not nominating a candidate that our people didn't actually choose through this grassroots, nominating convention approach. If we don't have a good result there, we don't have a clear winner, right? We can put it onto a primary just because we're used to it, which we shouldn't do primaries because they're horrible. They're democratic, which means money wins instead of intelligence wins. But in any case, the point is very well made here that you know we're not entertaining shifting the will of the people, the voice of the people, to do something other than what the people said. This is not rocket science. Um, so anyway, uh, the Republican Party designed this convention-based process to ensure candidates reflect its platform. With a maximum of two candidates in a state-run primary, this approach guarantees nominees achieve a majority, not just a plurality of votes. Um, I take issue with that mathematically. Admittedly, there are people who are supposedly mathematical gurus who claim that you can have elections with a majority. The truth is, you can never guarantee a majority. You can never guarantee that the majority of voters will support a given candidate. You just can't. It's mathematically impossible. The only way they can pretend to do that, by the way, is just by narrowing the voting pool, by throwing away the votes of people who voted for someone else. They throw those votes away, and then they say, from what remains, there's a majority, which doesn't make sense. So that's sleight of hand, frankly, and under the current system. We can certainly forgive that because that's, again, just like with the fact that we have primaries. We shouldn't have primaries. We do have primaries. But again, the focus of this appeal is to roll back SB54 and get us back to 2014 when we still had, a caucus convention that didn't have a loophole. And this is great because this is the first step we need to take. All right. Candidate qualification requirements include filing a statement confirming no affiliation with other political parties. Exclusivity and acceptance of the party's platform is a standard for office holder performance. Certifications must be submitted at least 30 days before, etc. They must commit to party nomination procedures, which exclusively holds accountability, helps blah, 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 embody the values. Okay, all right. This is fascinating. So this unique process has fostered grassroots activism and a sense of ownership among members, with delegates acting as community advocates. The events leading up to this case began in 2013 when Count My Vote, a bipartisan group, lobbied the Utah Republican Party to revise its nomination procedures. They argued that the convention method, okay, deja vu, if you have ever read the history on how we got primaries, deja vu right here. I'll probably do another video on that. But they lobbied the Utah Republican Party to revise its nomination procedures. They're too Republican. They're too fair. They're too honest. They're too intelligent. Right? They argued that the convention method concentrated power among extreme views and limited broader representation. I'm sorry, excuse me. Can you count my vote? Right? Can you explain to me how people meeting in their own neighborhoods and talking with their own neighbors face to face, man to man, person to person, and voting, choosing by consensus among them the most intelligent, the most respectable, the most trustworthy among them to represent them? Tell me what's like extreme about that. You know what? Oh, okay, I'll grant them this. Technically, by definition, like, you will get people who are comparatively extremely intelligent, have extreme integrity in the affirmative, right? And who are extremely active and politically involved, right? I don't see a downside here. But this is why Count My Vote did this, is because they wanted to, they've always been doing this, if you're believe in the Constitution, if you have a traditional family, etc., then you're a right-wing extremist, right? So extreme views, and it limits broader representation. Yeah, because illegals need to vote. Like, if you can't see through this, repent. Because your intelligence, your discernment is a function of your morals. If you don't keep the law of chastity, you're not going to understand this. If you steal, this is going to be difficult for you. If you're accustomed to slandering other people, like, it corrupts your brain. This is something my father taught me. He said, no man is more intelligent than the commandments he keeps. And this is true. This is true. Is if you want to understand, like, which way is up in politics, etc., and on any matter, just keep God's commandments, and he'll teach you. He'll teach you everything. He's got an open book with all the secrets in the universe on it. He's just wanting to get it to you. It's just our brains can't handle it unless and until we choose the way of integrity. So yeah, limiting broader representation. So yeah, this inclusivity thing. I think I can say with a fair degree of, maybe I'm giving the devil too much credit here, but you could see this as one of the talking points of the adversary in the war in heaven, saying, hey, we need broader representation. We need more representation from evil people. We need more corruption of things. But yeah, if you and many regrettably more than a few Utah politicians have been pushing this kind of narrative, broader representation, like John Curtis talks about widening the tent. And what he means, and he's been talking about, like, oh, we need to get more young people into the Republican Party. And what he has stated to our faces is that, yeah, we need more. He didn't use this language, but we know this is what he meant by it. We need more climate weirdos in our party. sorry, I don't want to use disparaging language towards anybody, but it's objectively true that John Curtis has been trying to broaden, trying to do this very thing, get broader representation within the party by basically turning the Republican Party into a safe haven for people who who basically buy into leftist climate alarmism. And he's saying, "Oh, you need to talk about climate." And I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm a human being. I work. I have a job. You know, I try to provide for myself, and I try to understand good civics and respect other people's rights. Um, like the fact that we exhale carbon dioxide has never ever registered as an intelligent uh, dispute, right? An intelligent concern. Carbon dioxide is plant food. Look up the IPCC formulas on that if you want to have some really good points for debating people who push that. Anyway, sorry. I apologize. My brain is diverging here, but so Count My Vote aims to ensure nominees had wider support for the general election ballot, and basically like I'm just gonna turn on my Republican translate here and say, yeah, you're saying that you want people you want to dupe Republicans into voting for Democrats because they're Democrats who feel unrepresented in Utah politics because they can't get their candidate through unless and until they just slap a Republican label on it, exactly like they did with John Curtis. And by the way, why are they attacking the Utah Republican Party? Why is this lobbying group trying to get a party to change the way it nominates candidates? This is really stinky here, frankly. Right. Okay, advocating for changes like absentee voting. Yeah, because like if you're not there, should you be able to vote? And higher vote thresholds for nominations. Okay, when the party refused to change its rules, Count My Vote registered its initiative and collaborated. This is so slimy. Collaborated with the Utah legislature, resulting in the passage of SB54 in 2014. This law overhauled nomination requirements, requiring registered parties to follow specific processes to have their candidates listed with party affiliation on the ballot. Okay. The state now compels candidates nominated at the convention under Section 20A-9407 to participate in a direct primary where the party's nominee must compete against those who gathered signatures, including candidates who were eliminated at the party convention or did not attend the convention at all. Yeah, so enter Spencer Cox. This means that even if a candidate becomes the nominee at the indirect primary and is set to proceed to the general election according to the party's internal nominating procedures, the lieutenant governor effectively has a veto over the political party's nominee, as the nominee from the convention can, and often does, lose in the direct primary. Okay, and here's just another education point for everybody to understand. Is that, again, this criticism of, oh, the primary result was different from the convention result. I think Spencer Cox won by a little bit in the primary, and that meant he's now on the general election ballot, even though Phil Lyman was, he had a sizable amount of support from the general public even. But the problem is the general public is not as well informed. And here in the state of Utah, we are so accustomed to being unopposed, uncontested in our races that we're just like, oh, Republican. And that's how Spencer Cox got elected. And again, like, the prophet of God warned you not to do that. Let me just say that again. Like, this is not the, separation of church and state. I can't apply religious things to politics. Of course you can, because politics means policies. And religion, true religion, governs how we should live, governs our morals. It should govern our policies, certainly. Oh, but people are like, oh, you're advocating for a theocracy? I'm like, you know what? Live morally, live a moral, decent life, and a lot of these things will work themselves out, because we'll actually be applying what's right. But yeah, so voting a straight party ticket, it's so hazardous because like we just got too comfortable. We got too comfortable, Utah. What's up? Because like now we have somebody who's a Democrat, literally a Democrat, John Curtis, representing us in the United States Senate, and he just elected a majority leader who's not going to represent you well, right? So what gives, right? Anyway, this is really tragic. Like, I don't think we need to have this conversation if people would just follow the prophet and actually think about these things for real. Um, all right, I don't know how much longer I'm going to go on this tonight, but this, yeah, qualified political party. There's so many shenanigans. Like, there's so many layers deep of this onion right here, and this is why I kind of despair of being able to get through everything. But maybe the purpose isn't to get through everything. I think there are already enough action items, hopefully for anybody listening to this, to say, hmm, I should go investigate X. I should go look up, how did we get primaries? What is this SB54 thing? What's the signature gathering route? What did the first presidency really say that we should, you know, not vote a straight party ticket? Yes, they did. And we have this really great case in point. And so I just have to say, Phil Lyman, thank you for arguing this to the Supreme Court. This is a conversation that needs to be had, and not just a conversation, but frankly, in order for fairness to prevail, this SB54, the signature gathering thing, needs to be overturned because as those who participate in the caucus convention system well know, like the signature gathering route just does not represent us well. That is what cherry picks the extremists. You understand? Like, do you understand how easy it is to just go pay somebody a big chunk of money, if you have the money, and just have them go cherry pick these extremists who say, oh yeah, Fidel Castro for governor, Joseph Stalin, yes, absolutely. You know what? Just go around to all the extremists, have them sign it, go to the illegal immigrants, and I'm not saying all illegal immigrants are extremists, but like you get my point in that this process is not transparent. They haven't released the signatures, or let alone like the names of people who supposedly signed, so we can't verify it. And a legislative audit did turn up that Spencer Cox likely did not even have enough votes or enough signatures to qualify. So even there, he's like not even in keeping with the law as written. So, but on top of that, we're now challenging its constitutionality. I think I'm going to save most of the rest of this discussion for a future, probably series of talks on this. But the whole business of being a qualified political party, this is where we're getting into the territory of, like was stated in the opening paragraph of this. The question being presented is, does the state basically have authority to go and tell a party what to do? Do they have authority to give the party political power and then subvert it and use it, basically write the rules for the parties, it's this horrible incest. I want a really straightforward way to present it to you, but it's this horrible procedure by which if your party can't even set its own rules for how to nominate. I guess what I should say here, actually, we could get into the weeds in this all day, but just to simplify, we should not have political parties. We've been forced into political parties because we have the 12th Amendment to the Constitution, which eliminated the approval-based voting method that was original to the Constitution. First past the post forces you into a two-party system because you can't vote third party because you'll split your vote against your, with your favorite party, So you can't have two favorites, right? You can have two that you like. And so our ballots got less expressive. They got more contentious. That's why we have parties. Anyway, future video topic. We would not have these issues if we did not have parties. Anyway, maybe you didn't come here for my opinion. Maybe you just want to know what's in here. But like, we can unravel this. This system prohibits a ballot or ballot sheet from indicating a candidate's association with a political party unless the candidate is either nominated by a petition or nominated by a qualified political party. QPP. A QPP is defined as a registered political party that permits a delegate to vote on a candidate nomination in the registered political party's convention remotely, or provides a procedure for designating an alternate delegate if a delegate is not present at the registered political party's convention. Okay, so yeah. These conditions, the government setting these conditions for what is a qualified political party. Like, I'll just go ahead and give you my opinion again, because I'm just doing this, right? You probably wouldn't be watching this if you weren't interested in my opinion. I don't know. But if you have parties that, like, you could have a party, you could have something that's just a grassroots movement to try to popularize certain ideas, like, hey, we believe in the Second Amendment and stuff, right? And in that case, if it's like issue specific, it shouldn't be mutually exclusive. But yeah, again, they're creating these conditions and qualifications, saying what is a qualified political party, and this is one of the ways that they got the fishhook of SB54 to sink into the Republican Party, because now the Republican Party had to abide by the state's rules, which contradict the party's rules. Um, yeah. Anyways, yeah, and this is what the first presidency was talking about. How they hold their convention and they permit a member to seek the registered political party's nomination. So you have to be a member of the party to be nominated by it for any elective office by a member choosing to seek nomination by either or both of the following methods: nomination through the registered political party's convention, or nomination by collecting signatures. So if you want to summarize this, again, this is like convention versus signatures. Which one do you think better represents you? Um, if you have thoughts on the subject, I really want to know your honest, sincere thoughts. Which one represents you better? Convention or collecting signatures? All right. I'm probably not going to read the whole rest of this right now. It does go through some of just kind of what went down, some more of the background. But yeah, the very fact that there was this alternate path opened up, the first presidency called this out, said, danger, you need to get involved. You need to go get involved in the legitimate process because there, I guess you could opt into signature gathering. Maybe I shouldn't give the Gadiantons ideas here, but you can opt into participation in the caucus convention. That's just show up to your precinct caucus meeting. Yeah, so yeah, petitioner Lyman successfully secured the party's nomination and has collected 28,000 signatures, blah, 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 or allegedly bypassing the party's nominating convention results, etc. Anyway, it's getting more into the weeds here, but just wanted to at least, hopefully, you know it's there now. Link is in the description. I just love the primary question being presented here, namely, does the state is the state violating the constitutional rights of the members of the party when the members of the party say we want this candidate, and then the state says nope, he's not allowed to show up on your ballot. We have this back door, and we can spend our way to ballot. So I'm doubtless oversimplifying because we didn't get into everything. I think we're facing a little fatigue on this, but at a high level, yeah, just call to action here. I would say, yeah, learn about the caucus convention system. If you aren't already participating in it, participate in it because that's the way that you will learn about it. You're not going to learn as much about it by going around and perusing the comments of internet trolls who hate it, other than that they hate it. And if you hang around enough with them, then they'll probably, convince you that it's an evil, toxic thing that doesn't represent the people well. But again, like I would just pose this question to you: which do you think represents you better? Somebody going around paying a company money to go around and collect signatures from randos that we can't even vet and verify, right? Versus you show up in your neighborhood and you vote for someone you actually know to represent you, or you go ahead and you can nominate yourself. All you need is a second, and then you can run as a delegate. You need people to know you, and you need to be a decent person. You should be if you're going to participate in this. And yeah, go learn the Constitution. Go learn about the differences between republic and democracy. This is great stuff. So yeah, the Spencer Cox, the current Utah governor and ostensible governor-elect, has until December 12th to respond to this with his first brief. But I'm excited to see how this plays out. Let's one more call to action: pray. This is from section 101 in the Doctrine and Covenants, where the Lord says that if your constitutional rights are being trampled on, go and appeal it to the judge, and if the judge doesn't hear you, then appeal it to go through all the levels of appeal, and if at the very last no one grants you relief and upholds your constitutional rights, then you are to take that before the Lord, and then the Lord will come out and he will ultimately seek justice on your behalf in his own time. But this is the process. The Lord expects and requires us to do our best to seek relief. And by the way, he says in that section that we ought to pray for the judges. Pray for the judges who are making these decisions. He does say, he's very displeased with those who deny people their rights. But he says, I don't want to punish them. That's not a verbatim quote, I'm just paraphrasing, but he says that you should pray for their hearts to be softened so that these calamities don't come upon them. So I'll just wrap up this live stream with that, just to say, please pray for those who will be making decisions on this. I know that helps. I know the Lord softens hearts, and above all, our own hearts will be more softened, and the Lord will reveal things to us to become more persuasive. If I could, this is where I'm feeling Alma right here. Is if I could just have a trumpet that has the voice of thunder and just get this message into everybody's hearts and heads to say, hey, we need to respect people's rights. Hey, look what the government did. Like they're telling us that you don't have a right to choose your own candidates who show up on the ballot. Like this is a very severe issue. Anyways, please, you don't have to share, like, and subscribe, but um, you'll hear more of me if you do, and hopefully that's a good thing. But yeah, I'd love your input. But please do share this share this appeal and the information about it with others. I'm going to try to do my best to be more and more persuasive, more concise, more just like present this in a really digestible way to the public. Because like, if you are at this point in this live stream, then like you are the handful. Like you are one of the very few who has spends the time on this, and I hope that's hope this is good use of your time, just getting through these things and understanding them and promoting them. So thanks very much. And I'm going to see. Oh yeah, there's an addendum, so so you don't skip over that. So just the uh, this was the motion to the yeah. Sorry, I'm getting brain fog right now. But there's an addendum. You can read it if you want. The judgment sought to be reviewed. That's what it is. There we go. Sorry. So that's the Utah Supreme Court's ruling on it. And yeah, just a shout out for my website here, constitutionalvoting.org. This is what I think is one of the final dominoes, final layers of the onion to unravel the secret combinations. There's this voting method in the Constitution that grants you a Republican method of government. Like you can actually sustain a republic if you have this method of election, and if you have something like what we have today through the 12th Amendment, then you're guaranteed to lose a republic. So please check that out, constitutionalvote.org. And yeah, here's the first presidency letter. If you want to go check that out, this is from Brady Magazine. They actually reproduced the whole thing here. There were some other news sources that did not, for example, call out the fact that they had the, let's see, greater involvement in the 2016 election cycle. Yes. Oh yeah, in a petition process. That's the signature. Like this is the first presidency talking about SB54. So I hope and pray that you treat this seriously and share with your friends. All right, that's all for